bad moods or bad states of mind. We've all been there. But it doesn't always have to be bad. We can shift ourselves into more positive states. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about how you can shift your state from a more negative one to a more positive one. So, I've always had ups and downs, and many of us do. We're all human beings, so it's perfectly natural. But recently, I experienced a lot of downs. I was feeling quite, not so good about things, even though a lot of good things were in my life. And I had enough of it, basically. So I constantly was working on ways to get myself into a more positive state. So I read a lot of personal development books, as most of you will know. And I started applying more and more actions to get me into a more positive state of mind, whether that's what I was eating, what I was doing, or how I was interacting with people, just getting myself into more of a positive state. And I realised, the cool thing I realised was, it's my responsibility to get me into a positive state. I don't wait on something else to happen. I take action. I need to take action to make myself feel better. So there are various strategies I put in place and tips and habits I gave myself in order to feel better. So I'm going to be sharing some of these with you. So my first tip is, it's okay to not be okay. You've probably seen that quote, but I just like to reinforce it on this video. We all have ups and downs, and we can all feel anxiety, depression, stress, or you can just be angry. Could be angry at a situation. We're all going to experience negative emotions, but it's useful to remind yourself that it's not permanent. It's not going to be permanent. Obviously, if there's a long-term issue, you need to have a look at it. But acknowledging the negative feeling and then understanding it's not permanent is a really useful thing to do. And I found myself, it's really good to remind myself that, for my own self-awareness, that it's not going to last forever. Okay, so that first tip is the self-awareness, and you're thinking, well, that's not going to solve it. No, feeling down's not going to be improved by just acknowledging that you're feeling down. But that's the first good step. My second tip is smiling. Just smile as much as you can. Now, a habit I've been starting to do in the morning is just standing there, looking out the window and smiling for a minute. That sounds a bit crazy, as some of my ideas are, but it really works. Your brain doesn't necessarily know what's fake and what's real, and by smiling, you're trying to reinforce yourself that you're feeling good. You're feeling good. And then I found myself, from that practice and trying to smile to people as much as possible, I feel a lot better. So smiling as many times as you can a day is a real useful thing to do to get yourself into a more positive state. The next tip is around writing it down, getting all those thoughts out of your head and onto paper. But there's a step further. So first of all, that's the acknowledging, as tip number 1 was. But then, in addition to that, start asking yourself questions, and the right kind of questions, such as, how can I feel better? What's going good in my life? How can I use that to go forward? Because when we ask our brain questions, it will start searching for the answer. So a question such as, oh, why is this happening to me? Why is my life so bad? It's completely different to, okay, what can I learn from this? What's going well that I can use? So by asking yourself the right questions from the initial thoughts that have come out of your head, you can start to search for more positive answers, and therefore look for more positive actions and increase your positive state. The next tip is to go for a walk. Be with nature. Be out and about. Now, I'm English and it rains a lot here. Fortunately, actually, it's quite sunny today. But even going for a walk, getting your rain jacket on, can help. Being out in nature allows you to be more present, rather than all these thoughts going in your head that might be causing a negative state. When you're out and about with nature, you're going to feel more positive and more present. Building on from that last point, exercise. So a walk is a form of exercise, that's great. But there's many forms of exercise. So there's walk, there's doing a bit of yoga, there's swimming, there's running, there's doing some kind of sport, there's weightlifting, there's many forms of exercise. But when you do exercise, your body produces endorphins, makes you feel better, and that's going to shift your state. So rather than just sitting there and thinking, oh, I'm feeling awful, do something exercise-wise to help your body feel a little better, even if it's real simple exercise such as stretching or yoga. Doing exercise can help shift your state into a more positive one too. My next tip is a little bit of how to not make yourself into a worse state. And I've talked about this before, but it's get off social media. Now, when you're feeling down and you go on social media and you see your friends having these so-called perfect lives, when actually they've not all got these perfect lives, they have troubles, you're going to feel worse by comparing yourself in a negative position to these so-called really perfect lives you see. So reduce the amount of social media or else your state's going to get a lot worse. And when we're on social media, we're not present, we're not connecting with ourselves as much. So by reducing your social media, it's going to help your state as well. My final tip kind of wraps all the others into one, and it's taking action. What I'm talking about here is when you feel down, you feel like you don't want to do anything sometimes. But when we feel progress or improvement in something, we feel better about ourselves. And that can only happen by taking action. So I'll give you an example. When I started a job I was really nervous about asking people things. I was a bit of a people pleaser, which I've only kind of got better at over recent times in terms of not trying to please people as much. But I was really scared of kind of asking people these questions or suggesting things to them, but I needed to do that, and I get myself all worked up and I feel, oh, I'm not getting anywhere, I'm not this kind of person. But when I actually force myself to say something to someone or make a suggestion, we were therefore in a better position because we were able to progress with the project, and I felt like I'd achieved something. So I felt down and I felt annoyed, I felt frustrated with myself and nervous about asking someone something, but then when I did it, I felt a lot better. So sometimes it's a case of just taking action to shift our state from that negative one to a more positive one. You'll probably know what question's coming today, but I'm going to say it anyway, just in case you didn't. If you're in a bad state and you want to be in a more positive one, it's your responsibility, remember. What action can you do to change your state? So could you smile? Could you go for a walk? Or could you do something out of your comfort zone to shift you into a more positive state? So that's today's question. To summarise what we talked about today, so we've talked about being in a bad state to get into a positive state is your responsibility, so you need to take action. There's many ways to do this. There could be to just take action when you're scared. There could be to smile more, could be to exercise. There's various methods. And the ones I've said aren't the ones you're limited to. Just Google perhaps some suggestions for getting yourself into a more positive state. But don't allow yourself to be in a negative state. You can get into a more positive one. You've just got to keep taking action, even if it's continuous action. If you're in a lot of bad moods from your situation, just keep taking action to get yourself into a more positive one.